Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're back in 2 Thessalonians 2 in that same section. We're going to continue with our conversation from last week that we got cut short. Yeah. I always love it, though. Just
we didn't have time.
Yeah, we ran out of time. It's true.
Is there time?
Well, that's why I love like a group like this, a smaller Bible study, because like even the potluck that we do, the first time, you can't do it like this. You can't like ask questions and talk. No, I mean you get some when I make jokes about people and stuff like that, but
not
you don't get a back and forth and be able to answer questions like that. So that's why this time is sweet, and so I'm grateful for it. But yeah, that makes things move along a little slower, and we end up in the same section we were the week before.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I think it's a good thing that we can focus on just what we're going to talk about tonight, because I was trying to put it together, and really I was cramming it, but there was more to say, and so I'm glad I got an opportunity to do that, because there's so much here, and I think that's really incredible about God's Word, is that you could take just a few words or a small section, and it's packed, There's so much there. So I'm so grateful for that. But we're talking about God's comfort, because that's what these verses talk about, his hope and his comfort that he gives to us just in our lives because we're his. Because we have this blessed hope that we're looking forward to, and we can take comfort in that no matter what happens to us in this life, no matter the things that are going on, no matter what the world looks like, we still have this comfort. And it's a comfort that can't be taken away because it's not ours, it's his. And when something's the Lord's, it's his to give and it's his to keep. And so we don't have to worry about keeping it. We could just abide in it and rest in it. And that's how you get comfort. It's kind of hard to have comfort if you're always like striving after something. You know what I'm saying? If you're always striving to get something, where's the comfort in that? Where's the peace in that? It never stops. It just keeps going and going and going. But when it's the Lord's, then you're just like, okay, well, it's not mine. I didn't have to work for it. He gave it to me for free. And yet, here it's mine and that's it. And then he's going to keep it for me. And so that's what's so beautiful about just God in general and what he gives, is when he gives gifts, it's not up to us to keep them. It's up to him to do what he wants to do with it. And that I think we can lose sight of sometimes and try to really struggle and strive after the things that we want for our lives. And oftentimes we get ahead of God in those things, and then we're worried about keeping them, and so we're continuing to move forward and try to progress, and it's a never-ending battle because it just becomes a hamster wheel that you're trying to keep it and trying to keep it and trying to keep it and trying to get better and trying to keep it, and there's no peace in that because it wasn't the Lord's. But when something is the Lord's, like, it's worth waiting for him, because when he gives it, then you don't have to worry about keeping it anymore. He gave it to you, and so it's not yours, it's his. You see what I'm saying? Like, when you do something for your own life, that's yours that you have to try to keep. But when he does it for you, you don't have to try to keep it anymore because he gave it to you. Yeah?
Security.
It is. It's absolute security. And especially when this life gets scary, which it does. And I mean, what we know is coming is scary too, to a certain degree. I mean, you can look at the Word of God and you're like, oh, wow, this is kind of sketch. It's kind of scary to see the things that are going to happen. And yet know that somewhere along the line, like, we're in there somewhere. How far we go, we don't exactly know. And so what does this look like, God? But in all of that, he gives us a great comfort and a great hope that he's going to take care of us no matter what. No matter how far we go along in this story, in all the craziness that's going to be happening toward the end times, we don't have to worry because we know he's got us. We know our life is his. And it's a huge blessing to give God your whole life, because then you're not worried about it anymore. You know, when you're holding on to something in your life and it's yours and not the Lord's, you're concerned about keeping it all the time. But when it's the Lord's, like when you give your whole life to the Lord, then you know that He's going to take care of it because He's taking you wherever you go. And wherever your last day ends up, great. I guess the Lord was done with me there and I get to move on to bigger and better things. So it's beautiful. It really is. It seems like you're going to be missing out on something, but yet the Lord has so much more for you when you truly die to yourself and you just give Him everything that you are in your whole life. So I have no idea where we're at now. Yeah, I mean, I just
I was going to say,
ranted.
as
Yeah.
the other person though, when someone is that way, like Colton is, truly that way, like he just gives it to the Lord. And for someone like me that still wants to control things, as a wife, it can be very frustrating because I'm just always like, just do this, and he'll say like, no, if it's meant to, you know, the Lord wants it, he'll do it, you know. So it's like to be in that place is probably so much more peaceful than someone like me who's so anxious all the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's normal
Yeah.
for women. We just want to, you know.
We want to control.
Yeah, like,
Well-
like I said to Dave yesterday, you know, like about this housing situation. And then he said like, okay, be anxious for nothing. You know, 'cause you just want to like, all of a sudden.
He just
like,
hit you with a one-liner.
You know, I just want to kind of like do it, like
Yeah, you want to
control,
do
you
it.
know?
Yeah.
Do nothing, pray about
But
everything.
then it doesn't feel as good. Like he's so right. Like when he just let something like he's forced me to do because I can't do things always without him. You know, that involve both of us.
Yeah.
Like in this situation with their housing,
Yeah.
right? You're
Mhm.
forced to relax and
Yeah.
just gotta like let the Lord do it.
Yeah, but you just, you know.
But it feels, yeah.
Yeah, but it helps too, because that was a reminder. Then when I was, you know, in my, you know, when like before I went to sleep, I just said that word because I memorized that verse anyways. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and
Right.
supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be made known to God, and the
Mhm.
peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and in Christ Jesus.
Mhm.
Guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus.
Yeah.
So you just keep on repeating that until you just fall asleep, and God takes care of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you wake up tomorrow, go, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that was done.
Yeah.
Oh,
You have to worry all night long.
yeah.
And
It's just part of us. Yeah.
Jesus said, of course, somewhere in the Gospels, but I'm trying to think of the chapter in Matthew. He's talking about this. He's talking about birds of the air, the flowers of the field.
Yeah.
And he says, he basically says, you don't need to tell your Father what you need.
Yeah.
He already knows you have need of it.
Yeah.
But it's just the coming to Him and giving it to Him. It's freeing for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about Him. It's a relationship with Him.
Yeah.
And so you can lay it down and then let it go.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
Gary and I were talking about that on the way over here. Like, it's so awesome to look back and see what God has done
Mhm.
that you never even thought about.
Right.
Happening.
Mhm.
You know, how did I get in that situation, and what did He do for me?
Mhm.
I look back and I see all these things,
Yeah.
and I know that He was there
Right.
with a net when I fell. So it was really
That's
Yeah.
really cool. I love that with the net.
yeah, safety net.
Uh-huh.
Safety net.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like crazy.
Yeah.
But when you're going through it, just like what you were
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah, you
it's
don't know.
harder.
Yeah.
When
Of
you're
course.
going- you're blinded.
Mhm.
But once you get out of that, it's like, okay,
Mhm.
all right.
Well, let me ask you something. What blinds you in that moment?
Fear. Fear, emotions, yes.
Right? Because once you're past it,
Yeah,
you already know that it's taken care of, and so the fear is gone.
yeah.
Right?
Right.
So the only thing that blinds you in the moment is the fear of not having what you need.
And then the holding on too. Right?
Yeah.
What you were saying, like you want to keep that, you
Yeah.
know? It's like,
Or if you don't have it, you want to get it.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
yeah.
Trying.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder.
He did that.
That was the Lord, because that's not in my notes.
Yeah, I know.
I'm trying to figure out still how to segue back to my notes, right?
Very applicable. She started it, and then it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I can relate.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Anyway, where we're headed is our everlasting comfort, okay? The everlasting peace. Because remember that verse that we found where it says, some will wake to everlasting peace, but others will wake to everlasting judgment. Okay? Because that's where the world's headed. That's where God is taking us as a people, all of us. Everlasting comfort or everlasting judgment. It's one or the other. It's going to be a great day. And I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because for some it's going to be a terrible day. But for those who love the Lord, it's going to be a great day. How the Lord's going to work that out, how you can have some totally rejoicing and praising God for the great day that it is on one side, and have the other side totally mourning.
Right.
And
There could be some family also.
Oh, absolutely.
absolutely.
And you, are you
Yep.
gonna be conscious of that? Say, oh, well,
I don't think so.
oh, he's not here.
I think they're gonna be conscious of us being gone, but I don't think we're gonna really have those
there-
moments.
Yeah.
We're gonna have too much joy to be thinking
Yeah, I
about
just-
anything tragic.
See, and that's the thing. It says, we're not going to have sorrow. So we can't, maybe we know about them, but we're not sad about it.
Well, the rich man and the poor man, they both die, and one goes to,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Sheol, yeah.
In
and
Seoul.
the other goes to.
Paradise.
Both
Yeah.
of-
Mhm.
But the one in Sheol, in hell, is the one that is asking
Right,
a sip of water.
right.
Yeah.
The other one isn't.
See, and that kind of trips me out because there's a consciousness, like the people in paradise know about the people over there,
Right.
but they don't seem to be sad about it. You know what I'm saying? Like even there.
That's what we said, there's no sadness in hell.
Well, I think we all are going to know that God is just above all, and that whatever we get is right. And whether you go into the bad place or you go into the good place, you're going to know that whatever he is doing is the right thing to do. Everyone who is going to hell is going to hell for a reason. It's because they chose not to accept the Lord. Not because they were bad people. Not because they were any worse than us. Not because Christians are better people than anyone else, but because they simply didn't choose to say yes to Jesus when they had the opportunity.
Well, like somebody said, there's gonna be a lot of bad people in heaven, and a lot of good people.
Absolutely. Hmm. How would you feel if, like, someone like Hitler ended up in heaven?
Can you believe that?
I'm just curious. Like, does that make your stomach turn at all?
Well, if you knew it, you're already there.
What's that?
If you knew that you're already there.
If you were there.
If you were
If
there.
you were there and you saw Hitler there, what happens?
Well, going back to
Am I
what
in the
Jeremiah,
right
what
place?
David said earlier, we're probably full of joy that we don't even.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more envy there, right?
What you call
There's
my
no more
body.
jealousy.
Well,
There's
either,
no more.
either
Yeah.
that or you say, am I in the right place? Right?
Am I in the right place?
Where am I now?
Exactly.
Well,
Did I go there?
one thing,
I'd
one,
like to pick his brain.
Yeah.
yeah, see what's up there, huh?
I just can't even,
What if Mother Teresa's
I
not
can't
there?
wrap my head around it.
I know, that's what I'm saying. But the reason I bring that up is because God's grace is that big. Like, just because someone has killed millions of people, which, here's the thing, Hitler's not the worst there's ever been either. But just because you have a person like that doesn't mean that that's too big for God to bring to heaven. But
On his deathbed.
On his deathbed,
Yeah.
what if he,
He repents, so
like,
then he just said,
Yeah.
I screwed up. I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, it only takes that split second of faith. I mean, it,
There was a mass murderer that became born again. Who was it, Manson?
suicide?
One of them, because Greg Laurie's always
Let's
like
ask her.
interviewing
But you
them.
don't want to.
Mhm.
I forget.
yeah,
That's Jeremiah.
that's an interesting thought, though.
What does that mean?
Right? Like, the parable that comes to my mind is when Jesus tells the parable of the farmer who goes into the courts and all the people are standing around waiting to work, and he sends some and he says, hey, I'll pay you a day's wages. We'll figure it out. And he keeps going back and he keeps going back and he keeps going back all the way to the last hour of the day. And he says, I'll work out with you whatever is right. Well, at the end of the day, he's paying them all the same. And the people that got there first are mad that the people that got there last and only worked an hour are getting the same pay as them.
He's on the cross. I mean,
Absolutely. But that's the thing is you have to be aware that people that will not love God until the last hour are going to be there with us and get the same reward. He says that's what the kingdom of heaven is like.
Is that the first will be the last and the last will be the first?
I mean, that's part of it.
That, right? Yeah, he followed that verse, right? After, the parable. I think it's where you find that first will be the last will be the first. I think
It's
that's
possible.
I think
We'll have to
yeah,
see. I mean, I know
follow
he
that.
talks about that when James and John come to him and say, I want to sit at your right hand and your left. And after that, he says, the first will be last. Well, that's what he asks him. He says, are you able to drink the cup that I drink? And they say, oh, yeah, we are.
Yeah, you're gonna go hang on the cross like I am? Yeah.
You know what's funny, though, is he says that. James and John both say, yes, we are. And he says, you will. But John didn't die like that. He's the only one of the disciples to not die like that. But that doesn't mean that he didn't either, because I know he went through a lot of stuff. I mean, to be the only one of the disciples not to die of martyrdom is
They tried to kill him.
several times, I'm sure.
They tried to boil him in oil, I believe.
Oh.
Maybe I'm making that up.
No, I've heard that.
Yeah, and he didn't like boil or something, so he said, okay, we're gonna just put you on an island now.
I remember something like
That would be a bad one.
Who was it that you were
Yeah.
talking about that boiling oil?
John.
Right.
But you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I was right.
you are?
See, it's the parable of the laborers.
Uh-huh.
So you said, the
Yeah.
wages, and then towards the end, it says, for the last will be first, and the first last. For many are called, but few are chosen. So it's in that the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that within that.
Right. That same context, yeah. It's great.
Don't you think that the ones that are in judgment that are gonna be tossed to the lake, that they're gonna see all the opportunities they had?
Of course. It says they're going to be tormented with them night and day. All the bad things they ever did,
Wow.
they are going to continually play in their mind. It's going to be terrible. Like, I don't even like the bad things I did now.
Yeah.
I can't imagine
Yeah,
only
the
thinking about
guilt.
those.
Oh my
Do you think each rejection, like when somebody tried to talk to them about Jesus and they rejected it, do you think that will play back?
I don't know if it's going to, only the Lord knows exactly what they're going to have. And I'm sure it's going to be different for each person, because remember, even though they're in the lake of fire, in the place totally separated from God, like, I believe he's still sovereign over that. So he still determines what these people are going to think, and the rest of their existence, he's still in control of that. You're talking about Satan, you're talking about Hades, you're talking about death. He's still sovereign over all these things, even though they're now in the lake of fire. Their eternal resting place, so to speak. So,
Do you think that some of them will burn hotter than others? Love it.
What did you ask?
I said, do you think some of them will burn hotter than others?
I think it's
The
the,
Bible says you burn, you're in torment.
Torments.
with burning.
Burn fire.
Hot.
Yeah.
In the lake
It's
of fire.
unquenchable fire.
Lake of fire.
You know, Rita, there's many different types of wood out there, and they say that pine burns hotter, but it burns out faster too. While oak is more dense, and so it burns, but it takes longer.
So if you get upset at somebody, just
That's all I got.
Hope you're going to the oak farm.
Yeah.
You're gonna be in a forest fire.
So I can't answer that question, but I've seen what God has created, and I think it's interesting that he's created things differently like that. So
Wait a minute.
maybe
did
there's...
you already start your? Not yet.
All I know is
I
I'm
think he has.
Daphne, here's the thing. I've completely let this go by this point. Just let it go.
It's all Gary's
Like,
fault.
once I get past like the third question, I'm just like, okay, this is what it's gonna be.
It's all related though.
Yeah. It's okay, so here's what I'm getting at, okay? Is we have an everlasting comfort no matter where we're going, all the way up to our last day. Okay? We're all going to get the same reward. That's why we were talking about that. We all get the same thing. There's more reward in heaven.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
That's yeah.
But salvation is what he's talking about when he's talking about giving it, right? Because it's a laborer's wage. Okay? So we all get that salvation, that same salvation, but then we have different rewards in heaven. Okay?
That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay. Yeah. Store it for yourself, treasures in heaven.
Yes.
Okay. Those treasures are going to be different for all of us.
Okay.
Have you guys heard the joke about the New York cab driver and the Catholic priest?
No.
You haven't heard this?
I might have, but I don't.
Okay. So
Make us laugh.
I think you're going to enjoy it. It ties right into this. So there's a Catholic priest who's going to enter heaven. And he's standing at the gate. Peter's checking people in. He gets up and Peter calls out, "Hey, when you get up to the front, tell us your name and your occupation. We'll look it up. And if you're going in, and you'll get whatever you get." Well, he's seeing people as he's working his way up get their different things, their robes and their crowns and their staffs and all these cool things. And so he's thinking, priests, like, I should be getting great stuff when I get up there. So he gets up to the front, tells him his name, Catholic priest. Okay, awesome. Peter searches the list, finds his name. Okay, we're good. He hands him a wood staff and a crown of wood and just a wool robe to put on. So he puts it on. He's like, okay, starts to walk in. Right behind him comes up this guy and he goes, tells him his name and he goes, cab driver, New York City. And Peter searches the list, finds his name and goes, awesome. Gives him a gold crown, beautiful silk robe, beautiful staff, hands it to him. And he starts to walk in. And the priest turns around and goes, wait, what? I don't understand. Look at this stuff you gave me, like this raggedy stuff. I was a Catholic priest. He's a cab driver. And look at the beautiful stuff that you gave him. And Peter goes, you see, here in heaven, we judge people on their results. And when you preached, people slept. But when he drove, people prayed.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
There.
Bam.
You're right.
So,
huh?
it's roar. Yeah. What's that?
We need BAM t-shirts.
Bam t-shirts.
BAM,
Yes.
like little, like,
Bam.
like we all should sit together with our BAM shirts.
Yeah.
Josh is all intimidated the whole time.
And then have, and then have a little cardboard
Do that for
saying,
Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. Little signs. Bam.
But we need to have like a design, like a banner.
Yep.
It needs to be red with white
Yeah,
in
those
it.
are very
Babe,
design.
he said we need to have signs that when Josh says something good, we hold him up. Bam.
No, we can bring our t-shirts.
Yeah.
Do it.
That's a good one.
That would be good.
Yeah.
We can do both.
Okay, back on track, okay? Calm down. Don't freak out there.
We haven't been on track yet.
Okay. No.
Roger should
I'm
go to the
I'm
service.
fighting hard to get us through. See, what happens here is you guys make fun of me for being in the same section over and over, week after week, and you guys are the problem. Okay, everlasting comfort is what we're headed to. Okay?
Yes.
I don't know what's after that. In my notes, I mean. I don't know what's after that, but we're heading to everlasting comfort. Okay? In my notes, I mean, yeah. I don't think that coming to the Lord and doing what he says is a hard thing. But I do think that people make excuses for why they don't want to do it. You know, I relate this to like dealing with police officers, law enforcement, because what do you immediately go to the moment you get pulled over? You start to think of every excuse that you could possibly say to get you out of this, right? Oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that. Sorry.
Just did that last couple.
That is not true. I knew you were going to bring this up.
You brought it up. I was just confirming.
I had a legitimate excuse.
No, you didn't. Well,
For doing what?
I ran a stop sign.
and pulled out right in front of the.
Okay, here's the thing. We were leaving Dave Conley's house. You know that when you're going back toward Auburn from Dave Conley's house and that steep hill and then there's a stop sign right at the end? Okay, so I'm coming down that steep hill and I go to stop for the stop sign and my trailer brakes totally lock up, and they're going, "Arr!" And so when we get there, I look and there's nobody there, and so I just rolled it and went. Well, right as I'm rolling through, here comes a cop around the corner. And I'm like, of course, right?
Yeah, excuse.
Okay, so I knew he was going to pull us over, so I start slowing down. I come around the next corner, and I see him flash his lights, so I pull over. I'm like, okay. Comes up to the window. He's like, hey, I saw you roll that stop sign. I'm like, yeah, I apologize. My trailer brakes were locking up, and so I got to where I could see, and then I just rolled through. So I didn't, because what'll happen is the trailer brakes will lock the tire, and then you'll bald one side of the tire because you're just scraping it along the ground. There's not anti-lock brakes. And then you'll be driving with the trailer, and it'll be like, thump, thump, thump. Like, you ever had a cart like that at the grocery store?
Yeah.
Thump, 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 thump. The trailer will do the same thing. So we were super blessed. He was very gracious. He said, totally understandable. I think he was a newbie too, because he had a ride along with him that actually, he had another cop with him. And he yeah, did it?
I had to pull over because she had surgery for her carpal tunnel, and I was kind of in a hurry, and I did a rolling, and I kept going, and they were right there. I go, and I pulled over before they pulled me over.
Right. They do appreciate that.
But there was two of them. They're training. I just told them, I go, they're here. My wife's in panic. I get her medicine, whatever. Oh, where's
Yeah. Anyway, super grateful that the Lord protected us, because I would have not heard the end of it until it got off of my insurance record 5 years from now or whatever. Yeah. So,
Sorry to interrupt, but I read this one thing and it said if you ever get pulled over by a cop, just tell them you have IBS
Yeah, so you have to go poop.
and that you're just gonna poop your pants and you can't do anything about
IBS being irritable bowel syndrome.
One thing you
something
should
bowel
never do,
syndrome.
Yeah,
I
irritable.
have
tell
IBS,
the,
but
tell the cop
everywhere.
just wait for the stop sign to turn green.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah. I was sitting there waiting for it to turn green. It didn't. But you see, what happens to us is I believe that people are going to try to do this same thing with God, and they're actually doing it now, right? Because people will go through life thinking, okay, I'm just going to do whatever I need to do to still have what I want to have, but then be able to go to the good place after. But you see, you can't do that with God, because God knows the thoughts and intents of your heart. Matter of fact, he says his word is a discerner between the thoughts and intents of the heart, dividing between soul and spirit, bone and marrow. So just his very word does that same thing. He doesn't even need to. He's like, no, just my word does that to you, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. But you're talking about an entity that knows your every thought, that past, present, knows every intent of your heart, every thought of your head before it even comes out of your mouth. He knows it. So there's no going to be every once in a while you can finagle your way through with a police officer, maybe even a judge, but the high judge, our God, you're not going to be able to finagle your way through. And so I feel bad for those people who are living their lives trying to just squeak by, thinking that at the end, when they come to this judgment, because I think we all know that there's a judgment inherently, only because we know that there's good and bad. And we know that we do bad things and we do good things. And we know that there has to be retribution one way or another. You either get rewarded for doing good things or you get punished for doing bad things. We all know that. It's very simple. You could teach a 2-year-old that. You could teach even younger, right? If they go to grab something, you smack their hand, they know that's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So we all know this from birth. But a lot of people try to get around it somehow by doing something else and thinking that they're just going to make up for it later. It's not going to happen. So it's going to be both on that day. We're going to have everlasting comfort of the saints, but there's also going to be the weeping and gnashing of teeth of the people who thought they could get around it one way, shape, or form. It's just not going to happen. Let's go to this. Actually, let's read our verses here. As soon as I can pull it up. I got an older iPad, so it takes like 20 minutes for this.
It's funny what you said also. Even if Satan, you can't finagle him either because he's no dummy.
Right.
But the thing is if you admit it right off the bat, there's nowhere for them to go. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
so, and I've learned that with management. If they accuse you of something and you did it, it's like, yeah, you're right. And they're like,
Yeah, they don't expect that.
what?
Right.
I've done it many times and it's like, yeah, you're right, it won't happen again. And they're like,
Well, it's not the argument with
Instead,
anybody,
pass
right?
instead of
it's
denying.
like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm changed, man.
Yeah.
It's like, bam, that's,
Bam.
well,
Yeah. You bammed your own bam. Yeah. You're a self-bammer. Okay, so let's read through this section. In verse 16, it says, "Now may our Lord Jesus Christ himself and our God and Father, who has loved us and given us everlasting consolation and good hope by grace, comfort your hearts and establish you in every good work and word." Okay, now this is what we were leading into last week. That since we now have this blessed hope and comfort in our lives, what is the next step that we go to? What's the next step after knowing that we have this comfort? Everything we've just talked about today, that God is going to take care of us. He's got us all the way to the day of our death, leading us, and He's got this eternal hope for us, this blessed hope that we all have. He has that for us. So now, what's the next step for today? What's the application for right now? How do we live the rest of our lives? How are we different? Pat, you said you're changed. Like, what does that mean? Okay, I like that. How does it change your attitude, though? Like, how you approach things? Like, are you concerned about things as much? Are you worried about these things?
I'm at peace with what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. No matter what.
We are.
You know there's some bad stuff out there, but yeah.
Exactly. But I'm going to make it through. And even if I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
He's
Okay.
got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's a thing, giving it to him.
absolutely.
Well, it kind of connects back to how you started. When we have hope, it's because we've surrendered
Mm-hmm.
the situation or our lives to God, and we know He's in control, and He's a loving God that's promised to care for us.
Yeah.
But when we are fearful, it's because we're trying to be in control. We're trying to manipulate the outcome of the situation
Yeah.
to get our will done.
That's super true. Super true. So here it is. What I want to key in on here is that very last line. He says, "Comfort your hearts and establish you in every good word and work." Okay, so we touched on this a little bit last week, but when he says establish you in every good word and work, what does that mean? Okay, can anybody have an idea of what this means? To establish yourself in every good word and work?
Well, He prepares good works for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we want
That's
to
good.
move towards that.
Yes, absolutely. So to me, that means, what are you waiting for? Because what we were talking about before, all this bad stuff that's going to happen at the end, then he says, oh, but you're not going to be a part of this, so comfort yourself knowing that you have a hope to come. You have comfort ahead of you, not all this bad stuff that we're talking about. The bad stuff's going to happen, but you're not going to be a part of it. Okay? So knowing that bad things are going to happen, but you're not going to be a part of it, that changes your mindset, doesn't it? Huge. Now, I'll grant you this, that it is a process in us. I'm not saying like we walk out of here today and we think that we can walk into the middle of like a terrorist group and convert them all to Christianity and to love Jesus. Not saying it can't be done, but I'm saying it's the Lord's call. And when He is calling you to do something like that, He's working in you all the way up to that point to be able to handle a situation like that spiritually. Meaning that He's going to give you the boldness to step through all these other things to get to that point and say, okay, I'm ready to do this. Because I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that what's ahead of me is better than this anyway. Okay, you picking up what I'm putting down? If what's better for us and what's better to us is ahead of us and not in this life, then this life begins to not matter as much anymore. Our comfort here, our physical comfort, or even our emotional comfort here, starts to not matter as much anymore. I'm meaning in the ways like we're not so concerned about what people think about us. We're not so concerned about maybe getting hurt or being rejected. We talked about rejection last week. We're not so concerned about being rejected anymore. Why? Because we know that what's coming to us is better than what's here anyway. Okay? I had this situation happen. I knew, we've talked about this before. Whenever we're talking about something, especially when I'm talking about something, the Lord always puts it in my life too. I think so it's more tangible for me and I kind of get a grasp on it as well, and understand it to be sensitive and relatable in the situation, which I'm grateful for. But it's not always easy. And on Monday, it was the day after. So last Monday, I go to my client's house. We're going to start a new job. And her retina had detached. It partially detached. And then she went in and had like whatever, I think they fill it up with gas or something like that. So it comes back to it and heals, something like that. Yeah. So she did that. And then like 2 months later, it completely detached. And so she was having to go back in again. Basically, she was blind in one eye. And she's telling me about this. And I immediately, I started like feeling like God wanted me to pray for her. But I immediately start having this wrestling match within you, right? Like, oh no, like she wouldn't go for that. And then you're like, no, I'm telling you to do that. Oh no, she's, and these people like, they're not exactly, how do I put this lightly? They're liberal. And I mean, I think that's the best way to put it. And they made this very clear with a certain police, a certain court case that involved the police a while back, pretty high profile case. And I just happened to be at their house when like the verdict came in. And it was an interesting situation. Anyway, so that all happened. That comes to the back of my mind when this is going on. And I'm like, oh man, like this is not good. And in the midst of all that, I felt the Lord totally start to encourage me. And I'm like, oh wow, like this is cool. Like I'm getting this encouragement. After I had like already pushed it off and said like, okay, I just can't do this. Like I start feeling the Lord encourage me. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. And then she starts talking about heaven. Like how I don't know if she really has a relationship with God or her family has a relationship with God and talking about heaven in that way. But she started to talk about like how some family members who had died, like she was talking about them and she's like, but they're in heaven now. And so that like gave me some hope. Like that was the Lord encouraging me. And I ended up not getting an opportunity to pray for her because right at that moment where I was going to be like, hey, can I pray for you? Her son walked out and started talking to us, and then like we started talking about something else, and then the moment was gone. But it confirmed to me two things. Number one, even though like we can 100% believe that what God has for us is better, and we're gonna get better things coming to us, like you still have fear of things that can happen to you, and that fear of rejection. And it takes the Lord to be able to spur you on and do it. But it also confirmed to me that I'm willing to do what the Lord wants me to do as long as I have confirmation that He's wanting to do it, you know? So all that happened within like a minute, maybe, you know? You ever have that happen to you within you? Like it just like all happening at once. It's like, you ever seen two bears on the Discovery Channel wrestling and rolling downhill at the same time? It was kind of like that. Like it felt like that. None of you guys have ever seen that? Okay. Okay. Yeah. I saw that on Discovery Channel one time. These two grizzly bears were fighting on a steep slope, and they got it and they started rolling together, and then they like yard sailed, and it was crazy. But that's how I felt inside. And Anyway, all that to say, I'm not expecting out of myself or out of any of you that we all just jump into the water and say, hey, I can do anything now because I have this blessed hope that I don't have to worry about anything and I just worry about the next life after this. But what I am saying is that when the Lord is calling you to do something, He'll strengthen you for those moments and He'll grow your faith and your boldness to get to the place that He wants you to be at. Now, we're not all given grace the same, and so He has a different call for each one of us. So don't expect that what He asked me to do, He's going to ask you to do. And the same vice versa. Because I don't look at somebody else and think, okay, I should be doing what they're doing because I know that the Lord is doing something different in them than He is in me. He treats us all as individuals, and I'm grateful for that.
Me too.
Yeah.
I could never do what Marianne does.
Yes.
Marianne's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a
But you know,
it's her gift, right? Yeah.
You know what's funny about that is that ties right into what we were talking about, because Perry, I don't know if you guys realize this, but last Thursday night, Perry, her husband, gave his testimony too. Yeah, and she gave hers over here. Well, one thing he said is when he became a Christian, the church that he accepted the Lord at sent out a group to his house it was like a couple days later, sent out a group to his house just to come and answer questions and be able to strengthen him and just come alongside him. Marianne was in that group.
Wow.
She was a part of 4 people that came to his house. So you see, even in her life, the Lord started the things she does in a small way and grew her to the things that she does now. Isn't that? So it ties right in to how incredible the Lord is and exactly what I'm saying. Like, don't expect to just go out of here and jump off into the water and think that the Lord's going to do it. He's going to grow you. And so He equips you for these things. So look at Ephesians 2:10. I actually have it. It says, for we are His workmanship, that is God's. We are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Okay, so God is preparing. He's prepared these works, and then He's preparing you to do these good works as you come to them. Okay? But all these things God has aligned for us. But the part that I want to touch on here is it says that we were created in Christ Jesus for good works, because that's what we're coming to. Okay? If you have faith in the Lord and you're coming to the Lord, it's not your faith alone that saves you, right? Just because you know the Lord doesn't mean that... Are you leaving? Okay.
Sorry, I was trying to be slow.
It's okay.
and I wanted
Love
to-
you.
Okay, love you guys.
Love you.
Make sure she wants that kids out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, drive careful.
Okay, so it's not our faith in the Lord that saves us by itself, okay? Because faith by itself doesn't mean that you actually have faith. When I say faith, okay, let me clarify this. When I say faith, I mean the belief in God, okay? Because faith, by definition of Scripture, is... I just lost it, but it will come back to me.
Well, Satan believes in God.
Yes, so that's what I'm, and it even says that the demons believe in God and shudder, right? Faith is the,
Substance of things not seen, things hoped for.
yes, the hope for one. Faith is the blank of things hoped for. Faith is the substance of things hoped for.
Hebrews 11.
Hebrews 11.
Yeah.
Things unseen.
Yes.
On my wall.
Okay. Anyway, you know what I'm saying though, okay? So faith, being that, has to be something more than just believing, okay? You can believe there's a God and not be following God. You can believe God is real and still not be saved, not have your salvation, okay? And James, this is what I'm going to, James 2:26 says, For as the body apart from the Spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. Okay? He's not saying that you're saved by your works. What he's saying is your works prove your faith.
It's
See-
a result. Of
Yes.
You
Okay?
can tie it back to your opening idea of surrender. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you know, the demons believe in God. They have a knowledge of God, but they haven't surrendered.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it takes both a knowledge of God and a surrendering to who God is.
And you're talking about people, and I brought this up a few weeks back on a Thursday night men's group, that you're talking about entities, beings that were in the presence of God at one point, right? Angels are created and heavenly, and so they're in the presence of God, okay? So your faith has to be greater than their faith, because they fell to the same trick that Adam and Eve did. Was that whole thing that the devil sent them, like, oh, you could be God. God doesn't want you to be like him, and so he's separating you. Yeah, you can do it yourself. All those things are from the enemy. It's the oldest sin in the book, literally. And so, unless your faith is greater than the beings that were literally in his presence, you're not going to have salvation. In that, if your faith isn't great enough to show itself by your works and to keep you on the path to righteousness, then just believing means nothing. Just being in his presence means nothing. There's a greater work here that God is trying to lead us to, more than just faith, okay? It starts with faith. It starts with saying, okay, I believe God is real, and I believe he can do great things in my life, okay? But then, as your own relationship with the Lord grows, you have to grow into something more than just that. And he does that work. Remember the verse we just read? He's preparing those good works for you beforehand. So he's doing that work in you to lead you to the good works that he wants you to do, okay? But keep in mind that he says in James, faith without works is dead. Meaning, you can have faith, but if you don't prove it, it means nothing. You can believe God is real, but if you don't act like God is real, it means nothing. We were just talking about this with some people that we know who say one thing and yet do another thing. They're very concerned about the way that the world is going to go. And I know we talked about this last week and just being prepared for the things that are going to happen in the world. But being prepared is different than, okay, how do I phrase this? Being prepared and having faith that the Lord is going to take care of you is different than being prepared and trying to take care of yourself on your own. You know what I'm saying? So if you're preparing for all these things and yet saying that, oh, it means nothing, the world's going to come to an end and God is going to take us all out of it, then wait, you're saying two different things by your words and by your actions. Okay? That's what it says in James. Faith without works is dead. That's exactly what he's saying. Because you're saying one thing and yet doing another. Okay? So in our lives as Christians, our actions have to follow our words. Our actions have to follow our beliefs. Because if we truly believe that God is who he said he is, and we have this eternal comfort and hope coming to us, then we're going to live our lives differently. Okay? Let me show you how this progresses. Because God knows that if we believe in him, then we will want to do good works that he has prepared. Not that we have to do good works to have our salvation, but that we will want to because of all that he's done for us. Everything that the Lord has done for us will lead us to a place of wanting to get his work done, wanting to love on people so much to give them what God has already given us, to pass along that free gift. Okay? But God, in his infinite wisdom, knows that when we start to do those good works, we're going to end up at a place where people are not going to like us in a lot of situations. Okay? Meaning we're going to have some type of persecution along those ways, even just in doing good works. Okay? Because when you do the work of the Lord, people are going to realize you're doing the work of the Lord, and they're going to not like you because they know you're tied to the Lord. Picking up what I'm putting down? I'm seeing confused faces.
No. So
Okay?
in other words, we believe in God that he provides, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but then is it then opposite now of our action before stashing food?
No.
Because that was over.
Yeah, that was the conversation, okay? And that's what we talked about. We
Yes.
talked about Joseph and how he stored up for
Okay.
7 years, okay? So it's not wrong if God tells you to store up because he has a plan for that. But if God tells you not to store up and you store up anyway, that's a sin,
Okay.
okay? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because you're deliberately doing what God does not want you to do, okay? But there's no blanket statement for this saying that, oh, you should store up, we should all store up, or we should all not store up. If anybody says we should all do anything, it's wrong. Because God hasn't called us all to do all the same thing. God has called us to do what he's told us to do. And, you know, the prophet Isaiah ran around naked for 3 years. He didn't call everyone to run around naked for 3 years. He called Isaiah to do that because it was a picture of what, of Israel's nakedness. Isaiah was a prophet to Israel, and it was a picture of their nakedness and what they were doing, how they were living in such debauchery. Okay? But that doesn't mean it was everyone's call. Okay? So, these good works come out of our faith. Where's the verse I was looking? Oh, but God said, Jesus said, a servant is not greater than his master. Okay? So when you come to these good works and you start to receive persecution because of these good works, God already knows that's going to happen. He's already told us it's going to happen because he said that a servant is not greater than his master. The world hated me first, so it will also hate you. Okay? I know it's hard that when people that you knew 40 years ago or so on Facebook don't like you anymore because you love Jesus. That's a difficult thing to swallow. And it's even more difficult when your own family doesn't like you because you love Jesus. Okay? But as a Christian, if you're doing the work of God, you're going to have to expect that people aren't going to like you for it. But it's proof of our salvation to us, because that's what it says in James, that if you have a belief and you act on that belief, that means you really believe it. Okay, so if you believe in God and then you do his good works that he's prepared for you, that means you have your salvation. It's a proof of salvation. Okay? As there are many others, actually. But it's one proof of salvation because you're actually living what you say you believe. Okay? But within all of our lives, we're going to have to realize that we're going to have persecution. But in that persecution, you have to realize that you're doing something right. It's not wrong that people are persecuting you, because if they're persecuting you, that means you're doing what God has told you to do in most cases. Okay? If you have a belief and then you act on that belief in good works and you receive persecution, you then know, according to James, that you have your salvation. Because your salvation is not based on just your belief, but on you acting on that belief. That's what makes your belief living and not dead. Okay? I know we're going through a lot of this, but...
It kind of gets back to religion versus relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're in a true relationship, then eventually there's going to be the fruit of the Spirit in
Mhm.
your life.
You're absolutely right. And that is, I think, a difficult thing for people who don't know anything about God to understand, is what's the difference between doing good works for the Lord and doing good works to earn your salvation? Because it's good works both ways. Okay? I think the difference is the ego boost you get out of doing. Yeah, well, it's absolutely a hard issue.
Yeah.
But the world says that we need to earn it. Everything in the world tells you that you need to earn it. Every other religion in the world tells you that you need to earn it. God is exclusive. Our God, the true and living God, is exclusive in telling you that you don't need to earn it. It's a free gift. But if you have truly received that free gift and believe it, then you will act upon it.
Is it works just treating people the way, loving people the way Jesus loved those, just treating them nice, treating them like Jesus treats us. I mean,
Mhm.
you know what I'm trying to say, right?
What do you mean by nice, though?
Well,
Does that mean happy-go-lucky and
oh, stop it.
love this, love that?
No, but love
No,
fulfills the
just-
law and the prophets. There's
Mhm.
quote in the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
When we love our neighbor as ourselves, we're fulfilling the law and the prophets. So it's
Because they all rest upon that. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying, but I just know in our culture that a lot of these words are used very loosely. And love doesn't always mean nice, but it is loving, you know? And, you know, something, it's funny, like when I work, I can meditate on things. Some people like need to be totally doing nothing to actually think about things clearly.
I always tell my boss that.
Yeah. I know, right? No, when I'm working and doing something that I don't need to like really have my head in, I can meditate on other things. And today, I often go back to the interview that Lauren Daigle had with Ellen DeGeneres and put myself in that situation and think about what I would say. Because it's a tough situation for anyone. I know everyone is very bold in a small group like this, but when you're in front of a very famous person on TV that millions of people are going to see, how would you really react? And how do you really treat this?
No,
Yeah.
what was the question? I never saw it.
Ellen DeGeneres is homosexual.
Yes.
Okay, and so it all kind of stems on that and talking about love. And what I started thinking about today is how people say love is love. Okay, first of all, that really doesn't make sense if you think about it. Okay, because how can one thing define itself? Nothing defines itself but God. Okay, so you can't say love is love and have it make sense anyway. But what they're trying to say is that no matter what love is, love exists.
Okay.
No matter what I choose to act upon, love exists in this, even if it's not your style of love. But what I find interesting is that we all have a very apparent line of where love ends. And so you can't even really say, even in this culture, that love is love. Because all we have done in this culture is move the line back of what love is allowed to be. But that doesn't mean that it's love, number one, and it also doesn't mean that encapsulates everyone who believes that what they feel in their heart is love. Okay? Ellen DeGeneres has kids. Now, how would she feel if some old man came and said, hey, love is love, right? That means I can be with one of your children. Is that correct? So you see what I'm saying? The line has just moved back. In this culture, we're okay with love being in between two people of the same sex, but we're not quite okay with that. Okay? So you can't say love is love. And so what it comes down to is when you have any deviation of man and woman in a monogamous relationship between them and the Lord, okay, that God has created this oneness in, this one flesh, taking two and making it one flesh. If you have any deviation from what God wanted, you're still excluding someone, because there's always someone who is going to want something different than what God has said. So it doesn't do us any good to be okay with homosexuality in this culture, because eventually it's going to go farther. And then when we think that it's gone to its farthest, it's going to go even farther than that. Okay? And don't think that it's not happening right now, because in the Middle East, this happens right now. And it's happened before. Like Saddam Hussein, right, had many, to just say it, he had many sex slaves that they were keeping young by giving them certain types of hormones so that they would stay what they were. Okay? So is that love? In his heart, I'm sure he had some type of emotional connection. But is that okay? If that's not okay, then why is it okay for two people of the same sex to be together? Isn't that still a deviation from the original intent that God set up? Of course it is. So, all that to say, what's that? Did I answer your, I didn't answer your question? I didn't even answer my own question. But what I'm saying is, that's what I was thinking about in that, is that something that I could have brought up and said to her and just said, hey, would this be okay? If it's okay and we're supposed to accept homosexuality in this culture, even your own, you have to ask yourself that question. Would this be okay with you? Because to another person, that is love.
Well, you could answer it saying, well, it depends on who you ask. If it's,
Absolutely.
if you're asking me if it's okay, whatever you do is, to me is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not okay with God.
Yeah. And I highly doubt that would have been okay with Ellen DeGeneres too.
I'm sure.
Okay? So what it comes down to is where the line actually is. And if you have a deviation from where the Lord is, you can't say, if love is love, you can't say that anybody's love is out of bounds now, no matter with whom it is. Because you're out of bounds already. And so you can't say that somebody else is out of bounds just because some people say that it's okay for you to be out of bounds.
So is the perfect description and definition of love is
God.
God's love?
Yeah.
And then when you say God is love, you really have to see the totality of who God is, right?
Yeah.
In order for you to really define what love is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I believe this is one of the reasons that we're not going to be sorrowful in heaven, because we know that what God has done is completely and totally loving. Because, number one, for Him to give us a free gift of salvation, to be in His presence, total love. Greater love has no man than this, that He should lay down His life for His friends. Okay? But then, it's also loving to not allow the people that didn't accept Him into the same place that the people that lived their whole life for Him. Right? Because if He would let everyone that was supposed to go to hell into heaven, that wouldn't be loving to the people who accepted Him and lived their lives for Him. So we're going to understand and have a grasp on the fact that this is not American anymore. We're not in an American thought process anymore. We're in a godly thought process. And we understand that everything that He's done because He is love. And that He's wanted to give us love. Okay? So this is where we end up. We started at faith, right? We started with just the belief. That faith then moves on to good works. Okay? That good works then moves on to persecution. Persecution then moves on to eternal comfort. That's what we're talking about. It's a progression. Understand that if you're doing it right, you will experience all of these things in your life. Persecution being one of them. But that's okay. Because what comes next? Eternal comfort. We just talked about the disciples, how the vast majority of them died for their faith. Does that mean that all of us are going to die for our faith? Of course not. Does that mean that all of us are going to be positioned to even have that opportunity? Probably not. But you have to understand that these people believed in God so much that they were willing to die. And that, I think, is the takeaway from my little experience that I had on Monday. Yeah, there was a wrestling match, but at the end, I was willing, even though I didn't get the opportunity to pray for her. I was willing to. It just didn't happen. Now, if I would have been willing a few seconds earlier, it probably would have happened. But I was arguing. But He did get me to the point. He understood what I needed and gave me that. But then it just wasn't His will, I guess. Now, will I get that opportunity? I don't know. But I know next time, whether it's with her or with somebody completely different, I'll have a different kind of boldness, because I know that when the Holy Spirit prompts me to do something, that He's going to want me to do it. In that He is not going to let me out of it just because I say no. He's going to continue to encourage me to do it and do it and do it until I finally just do it. But I think that is what holds each one of us back a lot, is like, does God actually want me to do this? Or is this just me? Because we know that if God wants us to do it, that he's going to prepare not only our heart to do it, but he's going to prepare the person's heart that we're ministering to as well. So
It's funny how that works too, because sometimes you'll be in that situation, and before you're even thinking about it, you're praying, and then afterwards you're like, wow.
The right
Mhm.
country.
It was like, it happened like that fast.
yeah.
But yet, the last time, you wouldn't do it, it was just a battle, and you didn't do it.
Right.
This time, bam, it's done. It's like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yep.
Weird how the situation,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yep.
And that's in him.
Absolutely. It has to be him. And that's why I'm saying, like, it's not, if God hasn't prepared you to do a good work, don't expect that you're going to be able to do it. Okay? Because it's up to him to strengthen you in that moment, in that very moment. But if he wants you to do these things, then he's going to grow you in it and grow you in it and grow you in it until you get to the point where you could do the things that you never thought you could, really. You never even thought you would be in a situation to. So,
Don't you feel that we have it so good here in our country? Like, with the persecution that you're talking about, like just being, alienated from your family, what have you, it's nothing compared to what other Christians are going through.
yeah, I mean, we're crybabies here.
Huh?
We're crybabies here.
Tribulation is
Yeah.
different for every person.
Yeah, I know, but it's kind of like, if
To a point you can't compare.
if you think about it, like the voice of the martyrs or what have you, the people who are persecuted because of their faith.
People that are getting beheaded.
When we look at ourselves, like we have it so good.
We do.
And then we just take it for granted.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what is the percentage of people calling themselves as Christians here in America? Like 70%?
I don't know. It's a
But we
lot,
don't-
though.
Yeah, but we don't, 70%, right? But we don't even feel that kind of persecution. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I
It's like-
completely understand.
Yeah,
It hurts though.
Mhm.
It hurts, our heart when we see people
yeah,
dissing Jesus
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
not listening to what
yeah.
our words of wisdom are about him and just, ignoring it or whatever. That just hurts me.
Mhm.
But it doesn't behead me.
Right.
So, you can't really
I keep
compare
on
it.
I keep on thinking of that girl who was, there was a shooting in a school, and then this girl was asked by the shooters if you were a
Columbine.
Christian.
Columbine, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and then she stood up for her faith.
Faith.
That is really the persecution.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that,
Yeah.
wow.
That
But for
crazy-
us, no,
Crazy person.
yeah, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to, because, we have it so good here in
Mhm.
America. I mean, there's-
Well, it's obvious from Scripture that people who die from their faith have a special place in heaven, because in Revelation it tells us that those who were beheaded for their faith coming out of the tribulation were all, well, it tells us two things. They were around no, I'm mixing. So they were underneath. The ones who were beheaded were underneath, and they were asking the Lord when their blood would be, when vengeance would be had, basically. So he makes a differentiation between those who died for their faith and those who didn't. But, I mean, persecution is relative. He understands. He doesn't look at you and say, oh, you're a little crybaby. Like, you're getting like a little persecution and
Yeah.
this is ridiculous compared to other people. No, he doesn't treat you like that. He understands your heart and he's there with you. Knowing that it hurts. I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes, just thinking about it off the cuff, like, it would probably hurt me more to be rejected by a lot of people than it would be to die for the Lord, Like, I don't know, I think it's over quicker. If you were,
Second year in heaven.
yeah, like, but to be rejected and outcast by everyone around you, that would be harder.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on it. It's the Lord's will. I mean, you can't say that John was a bad Christian because he didn't die for his faith. Directly, anyway. I'm talking about the disciple John,
Yeah.
Apostle John.
Yeah.
And you can't say that any of the other disciples were greater than him. Like
Yeah.
Jesus said that. Like the last will be first. The least will be the greatest.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Yeah. We were talking about that last night. Like I was telling Dave and Jeremiah, like it would have been nice. I mean, this is just my
Mhm.
selfish, imagination.
Uh-huh.
Like, what if we really have to go through the tribulation?
Yeah.
You know, do we still believe?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know there's rapture. The
Right.
rapture will happen first before the great
Yeah.
tribulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't also be nice to go through that and see how it turns out for a lot of people? Or
I feel like we're already going through that.
no, I mean going through, and then people would really react. Like there's really already like
Wouldn't it be nice?
natural
Would be interesting
disaster.
to see, I guess.
You know,
I think
are we
interesting
still-
is the word.
Interesting.
It would be
It
interesting.
would be interesting
Yeah.
to, you know.
We're supposed
And
to
then
Will
see
we
that
be able to
from
watch
everyone.
from where we are?
yeah, and then here comes our
the
family
rapture.
members
That would
calling
be
us
interesting.
like, hey, what are we gonna do? And then we tell them what Jesus, this is the only
No,
way.
just leave them a letter and go.
Why would you want to stick around the earth and watch 2/3 of it disappear?
Right.
Yeah.
Just leave
No,
them a
but
letter.
it would be nice.
No.
Nice. I always wanna, you know,
Well,
like
you're thinking to see. Yeah.
I wanna
Yeah, it'd
see
be
my
nice to see your
family, like
that'd be nice.
really saved. That they're like,
Yeah.
what is it? Tell me. And then we tell them about Jesus, and then they're on their knees. They're
Well, when you
know,
disappear, they're gonna remember everything you told them now.
It's nice to witness them.
Isn't it?
But the interesting part too is how, you know, how many will turn
Mm-hmm.
away because of already the suffering that
Yeah.
they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people are mad because they're having to go through some things, and then, you know, we can wake up tomorrow and not have anything in our bank account.
Yeah.
That would kind of tick us off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be, wait a minute, God, what is this about?
Yeah.
But we don't need money, right? Because we got our wealth stored in heaven.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So